on. And with that kind of, let me begin. But before that, just want to quickly introduce the Dalgo team members that are on the call. So my name's Abhishek. I'm a product manager with Dalgo. We also have Siddhant on the call. He leads our consulting arm. And we also have Ashwini on the call, who leads the product overall. And with that, we'll get started. As I kind of set up, what I'm going to do in the meantime is just shoot out a quick poll, right? Just to set context, right? So the context of the call overall is that during today's webinar, we'll be discussing Dalgo's UI for transformation, which is a feature of Dalgo. So I'm going to shoot out a poll just to check very quickly, because I'm seeing a few new names over here, how familiar everyone is with Dalgo off the bat, right? So I can do a quick introduction to the product before I actually dive into this specific feature. So let me know when you can see it on your screen. 1 second. You should be able to see it now. Ashwini, could you confirm that you can see the poll? Or anyone else on the call, actually?
Yes, we can see the poll.
Yeah.
Wonderful. If you all could just put your responses in, that will help me kind of plan out the first 10 minutes or so of the call in terms of how much in depth I should explain what the platform is before I dive into this feature specifically. New folks who are entering, I hope you can also see a poll on your screen. And we'll give this another minute. Waiting for like 5 more people, 6 more. Yeah, sorry, 6 more people to respond to the poll. Thanks to everyone who's responded so far. Okay, so most people, 11 people on the call, just have an idea of Dalgo overall, right? Just that it's a data platform. And I'm just going to end the poll. I'll share the results with you, right? You should be able to see them now. All right, so what I'll do is first, I'll quickly take you all through what the platform is, and then we'll dive into this specific feature, and we'll go from there, right? But just wanted to set context overall that the aim of the webinar is to talk specifically about that feature. Given the nature of the attendance, I suspect a lot of questions will be about Dalgo overall. And what I would say to that is we'll address as much of your questions about the platform as possible on this call, but we won't be able to address everything, right? So for kind of more deep conversations about the platform, what its capabilities are, etc., we can schedule separate calls with you, or we'll do a separate webinar for that. But the primary focus of this webinar is the feature release, right? Which is our UI for transformation. So with that, I will share my screen. The poll results should have disappeared from your screen. Let me share my screen and get started. What is the screen that you all can see? Can someone confirm?
Right now it's black screen. Nothing is showing.
1 second.
Yeah. Can you reshare it?
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Shamun and Sid. So let me just slide share this. All right. So to begin very quickly, overall, this is the way this is going to go. I'll first give you a brief overview of the platform. I will try my best not to spend too much time here, even though I understand that we should spend some time here. And then a major chunk of our webinar today will be speaking about why UI for transformations, which is a part of the platform. And then I'll kind of do a little demo of actually using this feature of the platform. and then we'll move into Q&A, right? So with that, let's get started, right? I've already pushed this poll to you all, so we'll skip ahead. These are broad questions for y'all to just think about. If y'all could quickly put in the chat box, right? Put a 1 if any one of these resonates with you. Put a 4 if all 4 of these questions resonates with you. Or a 2 or a 3, right? How many of these questions is the answer yes to? Just put that number in the chat box. Do we have responses coming in? I cannot see here. Or I can. There it is. Wonderful. Thanks, Neil. Anshuman, Azim. Great. Okay, definitely not seeing any zeros. And I think that's the broad point that I wanted to make. Thanks everyone for being so responsive. Right, thanks, Tulsidas, Neil, everyone. So that's the broad point, right? We noticed that these are popular issues that nonprofits face, and it's to resolve these issues that we kind of came up with Dalgo. I'll very quickly go over what Dalgo does and then talk about what that enables for you, right? And if at any point you can't hear me clearly or anything, just let me know. So this is how Dalgo works, right? I'm diving straight in. You could have n number of sources of data, right? So Dalgo caters to over 300 sources of data. Some examples of sources of data are Comcare, Avni, Kobo Toolbox. These are all field data collection tools, right? Survey tools. Or you could have multiple Google Sheets as an organization. So that could be a source of data, Google Sheets. You could have a chatbot like Glyphic, right? So that could be another source of data. So nonprofits kind of collect data from various sources. Neil, could I ask you to mute yourself? You can go ahead and do that actually, unless you have a question, of course. Okay. So you could have a number of sources of data. And the idea is what Dalgo will do for you is instead of having all of those sources of data sit in separate places, right? Google Sheets data and Google Sheets, Glyphic data and BigQuery, Kobo Toolbox data and Kobo Toolbox itself. What Dalgo enables you to do first is ingest or extract that data, right, from all of these sources and pull it into a central location, which is your warehouse, right? So you can configure Dalgo to say that I have, sources, Comcare, Google Sheets, Glyphic, and pull data from all of these sources and put it in a central warehouse. So that's the first kind of functionality that Dalgo serves. The second thing is now I have these 3 sources of data or 3 data sets, right? And I want to work with it so that I can paint a complete picture of my program. So I'm going to want to maybe merge those data sets, or on specific data sets, I may want to kind of create new calculated columns, clean up the data, do things like that, right? So the second thing Dalgo enables you to do is transform the data, which is the merging, the cleaning, the creation of calculated columns, right? So what it will do is you configure the platform and say, hey, I want to join this data with this data, so on and so forth, right? And so it'll pull this data back from your warehouse, it'll run through Dalgo, get transformed, and then clean ready tables will go back to your warehouse, right? And the last thing that Dalgo does, which is super important, is that it helps to automate all of this, right? And basically what that means is once you said, hey, pull all of this data, and you've said, transform this data in so and so manner, what you can also do is set up Dalgo to do these 2 activities every day at 9 p.m. And then you never have to come back here. It'll just keep on doing the same thing every day at 9 p.m. Right? And that's kind of the overall functionality of the platform, right? It's called an ELT tool, extract, load, and transform, for those on the call who are technically inclined and know what that tool is. But essentially what it does is extracts your data from your sources, loads it into a warehouse, and also transforms it. Dalgo also provides visualization, which is optional. So we use a tool called Superset. Superset is like a Google Data Studio or a Power BI or a Tableau. Yeah, it's an open source tool which we've integrated into the platform. So we offer that as well. But even if you don't use Superset, once you have ready tables in your warehouse, you can push that to your own visualization tools. Or if you have an app, you can push it to your app, or you can push it kind of for further, more complicated machine learning calculations like collaborative filtering, churn rate analysis, so on and so forth, right? And that's the overall architecture of the platform. Quickly to kind of also talk about the benefits of that. Oops, something has happened. Yeah, is my screen back?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so kind of the benefits of Dalgo, what the solution enables is, like I mentioned, everything goes into a warehouse. Dalgo, through the transformation part of Dalgo, also helps you check for data quality. You can write tests on Dalgo to say, for example, if you're working with schools, check my data to see that there are 100 unique school IDs, or check my data to see that the maximum date in my data is today's date. So, you know, you have the latest data, right? So Dalgo enables you to do that. As with all things we do at Tech for Dev, Dalgo is a product by Tech for Dev. We provide consistent ongoing support to all our nonprofits because we know that when it comes to adopting tech, that's super important. And I think another important thing to mention, which we see being kind of a key reason for nonprofits to adopt Dalgo, is that you don't need to maintain your own complicated data pipeline, right? Um, it's all taken care of through this one product by this one team, and you're always just getting the latest version of the product. And you don't need to invest time, money, resources in building the infrastructure on your own and keeping it up to date. And that's a super quick overview of the platform. Conscious of time, we're doing okay. Just a quick example, since most folks aren't familiar with what the platform is. We have Sneha, who's one of the organizations that's on Dalgo. So they use Comcare, which is a data collection tool, and they have, I think, at least north of 20. I don't know if someone from Sneha is here on the call. We've also run a webinar with Sneha previously. So that video is up on our YouTube channel if you want to look at it. But Comcare, I mean, Sneha has about at least 20 plus, probably closer to 50 or 90 forms on Comcare, right? And they were pushing this Comcare data to Tableau, and it was not, they were not always getting the latest data, their pipelines were failing. And so that's when kind of the idea also for Dalgo kind of came up. And we developed Dalgo, they adopted it. And as a result of that, now all of their forms, the data from their forms would get pulled into their warehouse using Dalgo, transformed, and then pushed to various dashboards on Superset. What this enabled them to do was, one is that all of their data ingestion is happening in one place. They got the latest data, I mean, like one day, right? So today everyone can see yesterday's data. So T+1 data available to all of their field team members. And they also were able to do kind of role-based access to the dashboards. So M&E team sees specific dashboards, field team sees specific dashboard, field team coordinators see specific data and dashboards. And that's broadly and quickly a short use case. If you're curious to know more, please check out the video of the Sneha webinar and or the Antarang webinar, where we dive into how they use Dalgo, how it helped them, right? Both of these are on our YouTube channel, and we'll link it to you in the email that follows this webinar. And I'll stop now in case there are any questions. Just have these up here. These are some dashboards that Sneha created for their various teams as after they adopted Dalgo. But yeah, before we move forward into this, I'll stop and check if there are any questions really quick. Can give this maybe a minute or two. Does everyone feel like they have a fair sense of what the platform does now?
Abhishek, a couple of questions, right? Like, so you mentioned that Dalgo manages the validations and all in general, right? Like, so how is this populated? Like, is this automatic, or like, do you have a team like who collected the list of validations upfront and then added it into the pipeline itself?
So I'll explain I think in 2 points, right? The first point is, so there's data validation, which is at data collection, right? Which
Right.
is if you have a form, then you set up data validation. Then when someone is filling the form, if they put a number instead of text, it will not take the number, right?
Right.
So that is an NGO. The NGO would need to do that when they are setting
Right,
up
yep.
their forms, right?
Yep, yep.
And then there's data quality checks, which you
Right.
can do through Dalgo. And since you're asking that question, it's helpful towards reminding me that I should show you quickly what the platform looks like to make you all familiar, right? So this is how the platform looks. Sorry, who would ask the question?
This is Shubham. Yeah.
Shubham. Hi, Shubham. So this is in context of what I explained earlier, right? You set up your warehouse on the platform, you
Right.
set up your sources. So you can see over here, we set up a bunch of Google Sheets, right? You can see we set up a warehouse also here. So there's, when I was saying over 300 sources, all of the sources will show up here. This is a
Right.
demo account, so we're going to make it possible. And then you connect your source to your warehouse. So that's the ingestion or the data extraction piece. And then in the transformation piece, right? If you use GitHub, then within GitHub over here, right, using this tool called DBT, which is an open source tool that we've integrated into the platform, you can write tests, right?
Okay.
And when you write the test, so the test in SQL, when you write it, you'll say check for so many, school IDs or check for this date,
Right.
right? Then if a test fails, right, this is the pipeline. Once you've set everything up, over here, you'll see an orange line and it will say test failed. So then hey, something's up with my data, and then you will go back and you will fix whatever the issue is.
Right.
So this helps you set up data quality checks, which will inform you if your data quality is not matching your data quality requirements, following which you need to go debug that.
Sure. So basically, the validations are more of like an oversight that, okay, there could be days where things are not proper. Let's suppose we are only receiving 10% of the data instead of 100%. And right, but it still ingests the data and then you can refresh it maybe for last 2 days, 3 days, or whatever, a month, and it does that, right?
That's right. So just quickly to show you that, right? So warehouse sources in connections, you hit new connection, sorry, rather than new connection also, right? So you pick this and you will see over here, right? Whatever you're seeing here, you can pick whether or not you want to sync it and how you want to sync it. That's piece one. And then once you set up your transformations, you come to orchestrate, and here you can pick how often you want this to happen, right? So I'll say I picked a connection and I'm saying do this manually. I can also say do this daily at 4 a.m., right? And then it'll just keep running. So once I save this, it creates a pipeline, and then I just need to come here and watch this populated.
Sure, Abhishek. Sounds good.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Or rather, let's save those for the end so we can get into the meat of the webinar, which is the UI for transformation. Does that sound okay? Just give me a thumbs up or something if that works. Okay. So when I just showed the platform to Shubham, right, you'll notice that there were two paths, right? And the path that I opened for Shubham was this, right? The GitHub method, or what we have previously been referring to as the technical user method, right? Essentially what that is that in the previous version of the platform, what you would need to do for your transformation is set up your transformations using VS Code or dbt Cloud. Then put that onto GitHub, and on Dalgo, you would just connect your GitHub repository, right? And so this is broadly what you're connecting on Dalgo, right? This is the code that's sitting over there. And the problem with this is essentially that this makes it required for any NGO that's using Dalgo to know SQL or to know GitHub, right? And so we were motivated to kind of come up with this feature, which is the UI for transformation, for the following reasons. And the aim is to enable the nonprofits, which is you, to use the platform independently and easily. The idea is that everyone can benefit from Dalgo, because like we saw what your answers to were the questions that I put up in the beginning. Most of you are facing one, if not all of the problems that I put up over there, right, which Dalgo solves for. But very few nonprofits have expertise in SQL and GitHub. And more importantly, it's not like a nonprofit can quickly and easily hire a data engineer to fill this gap, right, of SQL and GitHub skills. We've noticed that that's a kind of a barrier for most nonprofits. And as a result of this, over the past few months, we've noticed that it's really challenging to hand over Dalgo to the nonprofit because of these two reasons, right? They don't have SQL and GitHub skills, and they're not hiring or able to find those engineers or hire those engineers. And secondly, since the nonprofits are not able to use this, then they depend on consulting, right, to adopt for adoption. Consulting is to suggest that they either come to us or to one of our partners or someone else and ask them, if we don't know SQL or GitHub, could you all write the transformations for us, right? And so that's why we came up with the UI for transformation. And what the UI for transformation aims to do, right, is to put this power in your hands and enable you to use it independently so that handover takes less time and nonprofits are able to learn and use their data more easily on their own. With that, I'm going to move into a little demo. Before I show you these objectives, I'd like to first show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with two data sets using the UI for transformation. And the two data sets are these. So the first data set you'll see, it's essentially a COVID survey that's been run by the World Health Organization. They've collected data for various countries on various statistics like cases, deaths, recovery, and tests, right? Broadly, those four buckets, various stats on that data. And the second data set we're working with is interviews of people, right? So the assumption here is that the WHO ran this survey per country and then surveyed individuals per country, right? So you'll notice both data sets have a common column called country code, right? And given that these are the two data sets, what we're going to try to do today is this, right? We're going to first try to group COVID data by continents, right? Currently, each row represents a country. We're going to try and group it by continent and see what is the total population and what are the total active cases per continent. After that, we're going to try to create a calculated column to find out what is the COVID-free population, right? So which is essentially the total population minus the active cases will give us the COVID-free population. And lastly, what we're going to try and do is join those two tables. We're going to try and join the the country level statistics with the person level statistics, right? And maybe see if there's a correlation that, I mean, of course, we won't do that on this call, but what that may enable us to do is see maybe the countries that are more COVID free, the sentiments of people from those interviews are that they're happier, right? And to do this, we're going to clean and prep the data as required, right? So just, I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. If anyone has questions, they can bring them up. In the meantime, let me pop over to the platform. Great. Okay, so hope everyone's with me. I'll continue. So you can see over here, I have an organization set up on Dalgo. I have a warehouse set up. I have two sources set up, which are these data sets, which I just showed you, and I've connected them. And now this is the UI for transformation opening page. And then when I click go to workflow, it opens up like this. Quickly giving you an overview. This is the canvas. This is the pane, the lower pane where you can see logs and dataset previews. And this is where I can see all the data sets in my warehouse, right? So currently I am looking for this data set. So I've clicked on it and it's popped up on my canvas. And now when I click on it over here, I can see a preview of all of the data, right? Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to get, let's just pop back to these. We want to group COVID data by continents and see population and active cases, right? Which means, excuse me, that my two key kind of metrics are population and active cases. And that also means that I don't need any of the other kind of metrics, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is you'll notice there's a whole bunch of columns over here. I don't want to work with all of this. So I'm going to first get rid of whatever is not useful to me. What I did is, sorry, just to explain, I clicked on the data set, functions show up on the right, and now I'm selecting the drop function to get rid of the columns that I don't want. I'm going to do this quickly, and we're also coming up with a way to make this a little less cumbersome. But for now, what I have to do is keep on picking ones like this and taking them out. Right, great. So now I have everything that I need, which is the code, the continent, the population, the country, and the active cases, right? So I hit save. And so now I've configured that function. And now what I want to do is create a table. I'm just going to call it drop table, right? And then it asks me for an output schema name. You'll see two options, intermediate and production, right? So everything that's not going to be connected to my dashboard, uh, I'm going to put that in intermediate, right? Every data set which will be useful to me as a final data set, I would put that in production, right? So this is just a data cleaning step I'm doing. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in intermediate, and I'm going to hit save. Every time I create a table, that's going to take about a minute. We're working on making that faster. But that basically means that y'all have a minute to ask me questions every time I create a table. So if anyone has anything, please go on.
So Abhishek, if I understand this, UI is basically writing a code in backend with these same characteristics and executing the same, right?
Correct, correct. It's generating SQL at the back.
Right, and then creating the table as well, right? Like with
Yeah.
the table and schema names. Okay.
Yeah. When I hit create a table, it creates a table. Yeah. And then that's getting saved to my warehouse.
Yep.
Shubham, which organization are you from?
I'm actually from Good. Like we directly don't need this tool because we are a skilled volunteering platform, but we received we received requests from a couple of organizations on how they can manage data. So I'm just trying to understand like couple of ways in which Dalgo works and also that we can recommend them. Yeah.
Understood. You said Vido, is it?
It's called Good. WEDOGWOD. Yeah.
Oh, we do good. Okay. Okay, so we can see successfully the table got created. I click on it and hit preview. Now I don't have a bunch of columns. I just have the columns that I need. I hope I didn't drop anything extra. Yeah, that looks good to me. So now we've got the drop table. Now our next step uh, from here is to, if you notice, right, let me zoom in. All of this data, you can see the type of the data over here on the right-hand side, right? So everything is currently character varying, which means it's like a string. But to me, since later on I want to do like subtraction and other arithmetic things, population and active cases, right? These are numbers, and I want these to be read as numbers, right? So my next step is going to be to hit the cast function and change population to a float, and to also change active cases to a float, right? And I'm going to save that, and I'm going to just create a table again. Just note at this point, like I'm creating a table at every step just to be safe. But if you are confident, like eventually when you get confident with using the platform, you can string a bunch of functions together and then just create a table at the end, right? For most functions, you can do that. And I'm going to call this the cast table. I'm going to say intermediate and hit save. Again, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
There's a question in chat, Abhishek.
Yes.
Is there? 1 second, check.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Rahul this side from Dhwani. So I have a question like, do we have any kind of applied steps if we want to go one step back, like we have in Power BI transformation portal? So where we can see the applied steps in the right side, and if you want to go back, just click that and it will show the previous steps.
So, I mean, two answers to that. One is currently all you can do is delete the latest step. Okay. So let me just come here. So now if I wanted to change this or this, I wouldn't be able to change it. I would have to first delete this and then change this. What we are working on is to enable you to edit anywhere. But more importantly, I think to your question is about version history, right?
Yes.
Like, can I
Yes.
see a version history and then click on one version and just bring that back?
Yes.
So currently you can't see a version history, but if you keep creating tables, then every created table becomes like a saved version for you, right? So
Oh,
that's always
okay.
in your warehouse. So you can always pull that table back. And that's a great suggestion. And we'll make a
Okay.
note of that and put that on the roadmap. Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
Thanks. Great. So this has run, and now like you can see, oh, I don't need to click here, but as you can see over here, I have active cases has become double precision, population has become double precision, right? And now broadly, my data set's almost ready, but I need to do some math on the data set. So I'm just going to check really quickly for nulls, right? If I have any nulls in the data set, I don't want any there. So I'm going to check active cases for nulls. I'm using the preview pane and sorting there. And I'm seeing that there are some nulls here for multiple countries, right? Like Netherlands, Sweden, UK. So I need to make sure all of those nulls become 0. I'll also check population. And for population, I'm actually seeing a null in population and in continent. There seems to be a country called Diamond Princess, right? And that's not a country. Actually, what that is it's a ship. And when WHO was running this survey, they also surveyed the ship. But I don't want this in my data set. So I'm going to have to take this out as well, right? So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to filter out Diamond Princess from this data set because it's not useful to me. And second is I'm going to take care of the nulls over here. I'm going to make these nulls 0, right? So first, let me hit filter, and then I'm going to pick the column. So the column I want to look at is country region. I'm going to say not equal to. So what I want is everything that's not equal to Diamond Princess, right? Pick value here. Everything that's not equal to in the country column, Diamond Princess. I want that data. So now I'm just going to string 2 together since I'm getting more comfortable with the platform. And then I'm going to add another function and I'm going to say coalesce. What coalesce does is it'll read the column you pick, and if there are any nulls in that, it'll replace it with a default value, right? These little eyes will always help you understand what the function does. So over here, what I'm going to coalesce is on active cases, and I'm going to say wherever you see a null, give me 0, and I'm going to call this active 0. Right? And I'm going to hit save. I'm going to create a table. And I'm going to call this clean table. Right? And I'm going to save this to intermediate. And we'll have that run. Again, any questions so far? Questions, confusions?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, like you are applying multiple steps here, and each steps has their own SQL query in the backend.
Hmm.
So, what if we applied 10 steps here, and uh, in the backend there will be a like a SQL query? But if you want to jump from 1 to the 10th, like in the backend, each steps will have their own query, and the combination of all the steps can be concluded in one query, and if we apply that query, it will directly jump from 1 to 10th only, just like we have in Power BI. So we have multiple steps applied, and in the backend there is like a M query which got generated for each steps. So what we can do in that, like we can combine all the M query language for all the steps and can write in one advanced editor. So we don't have to apply steps again and again. So we can directly jump from 1 to the 10 steps directly instead
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
doing again and again.
So the point I think you're making there is that if, I mean, or at least how I'm understanding it, someone from my team can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you're comfortable with SQL, right, you can just write these queries yourself, right? Then you don't need the UI for transformation. You can just do this on your own via the GitHub method. Um, and then essentially you would take the other path on this platform, right? This is for folks who don't know how to write those queries, and so they can build a step-by-step thing um, to kind of get to the final product without having to, pay attention to syntax, etc., etc. Just knowing what they want to do with their data.
Okay, but for the last steps, we have the query for the previous steps applied only. So we will not have the query for all the steps that we have created.
Oh no, it runs the entire thing.
So what if like for the clean table, we have the backend query for it. So
Mhm.
it will also consist the query for the previous steps.
1 second. Sid or Ashwini, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, yeah. Rahul, can you repeat again the last question you asked?
Siddhant, you are not audible.
Can you repeat your question again?
So yeah,
Or
we have multiple steps here. So one step is for course table, the other step for clean table. And suppose we have the first, the basic, the non-transformation query in the first. So we have applied two steps here. So in the clean table, the query will have the previous queries that got applied in course table as well, or only the clean table query. Like what
Uh,
if we want to jump from the first step to the 10th? The 10th step will have all the queries, or the ninth transformation query only.
so Rahul, like the way this works is like we are using DBT inside this, right? So every table which you create, it creates a new transformation, basically a new SQL. Um,
Mm.
so the thing which you are saying, if you want to use similar transformation for any other table, that
Mm.
is not possible right now. Like you'll have to do it with again with those many steps.
Okay, so
Um,
we have to repeat this. Suppose it got lost all the steps, so we have to perform that steps again and again.
So let me take this just question, Siddhant. I think one thing is this is our first cut of UI for transformations, and we are building on top of it. So the sophistication about undo, redo, all that, and moving to a certain step is not there right now. But we are working on it. What regarding your question about moving from cost table to clean table, till cost while we reach to cost table, we have already applied certain transformations, and now after doing the filter and coalesce on the cost table, the clean table is generated. So if your question says that will it have the previous 9 operations that has been done, the clean table will be a result of the previous operations basically. Is that making it clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Also being conscious of time, I'm going to maybe try and speed this up a little bit so that we have time for questions and closing. But where we are now, just to kind of come back, is that we now have a clean table. I can see here I have the new column active 0 that I created, and I also have this. So I'm going to have to drop this column, right? The old column. So I'm just going to hit drop. I'm going to say active cases, save. I'm going to create a table and click 2. Again, let's say that now that goes to production because that could be useful later, right? Just to kind of bring everyone's memory back on what we're trying to achieve, right? First, we want to group COVID data by continents to see the population and active cases. So I've cleaned all the data now, so we should be able to do this. Then we'll create a calculated column subtracting population and active cases. And then we'll just join this table that we've just created with the sentiments data, right? So coming back here, still running. right? So now I have my clean table 2. It only has the columns that I want. And now what I want to do is group the data by continent, and I want to sum up the population and the active cases, right? So I'm going to look for this function that says group. I'm going to say group by continent. I'm going to say active sum, and I'm going to call this continent active cases. Here it is. And then I'm going to add another aggregation. I'm going to say I want to do the same thing for population. And then I'm going to hit save. And this should give me the table. What should we call this? Continent. Yeah. Stats by continent. And we'll save that to production. This is something that I'm probably going to use in a dashboard. Yeah. Any questions from anyone else so far? Also, just to kind of mention to everyone, this will start taking a lot less time within a month. I was going to mention it at the end also. I'm just mentioning it now. So I think the time for each table to get created will come down significantly soon enough. Right, so now I have key stats by continent. Let's just see if that's panned out the way we wanted to. So I see continent, I see active cases, and I see population, right? So I've got the data that I want. I also wanted to run some subtraction over here. So I'll say, I want the people who are COVID free at the time of the survey. So I'm going to say total population minus active cases, right? And that will give me my COVID free people. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to create a table, and I'm going to call it COVID free by continent. And I'm going to save that to production. Oh, Sheetal has a point over here about instead of drop, wouldn't a keep function be more relevant? So Sheetal, the way we're going to do this, right, is I mean, or at least so far what the thinking has been, I mean, this point has been raised, is that essentially what we'll do is we keep the drop function and we'll have a select all checkbox. So then you can.
Yeah, I understood that. That's why I did it. So we will have multi-select there. And maybe I was wondering if a saving it to kind of make it for the later stage.
I can't hear you
Your-
clearly, Sheetal. Your voice cracked up about after the first. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's a little better. Go ahead.
So I was saying I understood it. I'm thinking you have a multi-select option later so that all the way fields can be selected as well.
Oh, I wasn't able to catch you again. If you could put in the chat box, I think we can come back to you there. Yeah. Okay. So now we have our final data, I mean, a new column, right? Which is the COVID free, which is a subtraction of those two, which is the population less the active cases. And that's all of the folks that are COVID free by continent. And the last objective was for us to just join two data sets, right? So the sentiments data set with the country data set. So let's just try to do that. And then we'll be done with these objectives. So what I wanted to do is join so I wanted to do it per country, right? So I'm going to have to join this clean table 2, which is still by country. right? I'm going to have to join this with my sentiment data set, which is this one, right? So I'm going to go look for the join function. And I'm going to say I want to join on the country code. The second table is, it's called 1_ text, but I want it from this schema, right? So I'm going to hit 1 text and I'm going to pull it from, this is the relevant one. It's always going to give it to me by schema. So I can pick the relevant one. I'm joining it. Again, I'm picking the second key column, just cut to code, and I want to do a left join, and I'm going to hit save. Now I create a table, call this join table, save this to production. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else? This is pretty much the last thing we have to do, and then we'll move into overall questions and 1 or 2 polls. And essentially, if there's ever an error in what you've done, you should be able to see that in the logs. We're working towards making the logs like much more intuitive, right? So as a first step, we're thinking maybe we'll highlight in a red line, you know, where the mistake or breakdown has happened. And then later on, we'll just try and give it in plain English, right? What the problem was, so that you can quickly go and fix it if you've configured a function incorrectly. And so here we go. We have the join table, right? It's joining this clean table and this textual table. So the textual table you can see here, right? It had these many rows. This has much fewer, about 208. When I've joined it, I have all of the data here. If I wanted to clean this up further, I would drop all the unnecessary columns, so on and so forth. But we're not going to do that on this call today, right? And with that, we close on this, right? We've created all of the tables that achieve our objective. What this has done is every table I've created, depending on which, whether I've saved it in intermediate or production, it's gotten saved to one of those schemas in my warehouse, right? And so if I wanted, what I could do is, like, if I'm using a visualization tool, I could go there. So I'm opening Superset, right? I could say add a data set. I could pick, what is this? Our current warehouse is called this, right? And then I can see all of the schemas in my warehouse. So then over here, I can go to production. I can now say that it should refresh this maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So that was the table we created, right? COVID free by continent webinar. And now I have the data set here, and I can then go ahead and create a chart, right? And let's say I want a pie chart, and say create new chart, and very quickly do this over here, all right? So continent, and what are we looking for? We're looking for, sorry, so COVID-free people. Let's just say some, and save, and create a chart. And now I have the chart, right? So the idea is that using the UI for transformation, you can quickly build that transformation in, and then you'll have your ready data sets for you to build visualizations. And with that, let me pop back to the deck and, right, so we've completed all of these objectives, and right, so this is where we are now with this feature. Like Ashwini was saying, this is version 1 of the UI for transformation. To move to the further versions, what we need is for NGOs to start using this feature. We have about 7 organizations who are actively testing, sharing feedback to inform, right? Because we know there are things that we could fix. Some of the things you all have brought up over this call, but just to help us prioritize and make it really kind of meet your immediate needs, we're having folks test it out, try it out. And we also have some additional operations that we're working on adding to the platform, which will come out in about a month's time. And yeah, please, if you'd like to sign up, be part of testing, or just overall just try this out, right? We're opening up a 1-month trial, and we'd love for you to give it a try, give the feature a try, or just overall try the platform. And if you'd like to, then I'm throwing up a poll in which you can quickly express your interest. Then we'll reach out to you, give you a beta testing account, and kind of help you get up and running quickly so that you can try this out, and let us know how it works for you. We can go from there. I'll wait for maybe 2 more minutes. 5 people have responded so far. If everyone else could respond, even if you're on the Dalgo team, just hit no if you're on the Dalgo team. I know how many of you are there. So waiting for 8 people have responded so far. Gonna give it maybe 10 seconds for anyone else. Great. So 7 people have said yes, they'd like to try it out. So super happy to hear that. We will reach out to you, give you an org, and start that conversation. And coming back to the deck, I think I just have one more thing to talk with everyone about. Just give me a second. Yeah, actually nothing more from me. If you have questions, everyone, open to questions. That's everything from us for today. And hope this was useful. When you log off, you're going to get a poll for feedback. Please kind of just spare a minute and a half to fill that survey in, just to rate the session, and to rate the webinar and tell us what can be better. Any questions from anyone? And if there aren't any, please feel free to drop off. That's everything from us today. Ashwini, Sid, Vinod, Rajiv, Shamoon, anything to add?
Hey, thanks, Nair. Yeah, everybody, thank you for attending this call. And it's good to hear about your questions on it. We're making a note of it because it gives us a kind of a momentum, a feedback for this feature in particular. As both of us mentioned that this feature is kind of the first cut, and we will keep building on top of it. And your feedback is very important to us so that uh, we can prioritize the requirements to get into the product roadmap. And feel free to reach out to us in case you want to try. You can drop us a note, drop us an email, and we'll be happy to connect with you and work with you together.